Twilio, the software company that makes it incredibly easy for developers to create and manage reliable communications processes via the cloud. Pretty much any app that sends you text messages is using their platform.
Jeff, on behalf of the BRIDGEGOOD team and the community, thank you so much for building a company that gives back to the community and leads by example in the industry. And more specifically, prioritizing diversity, equity, and inclusion at Twilio, and giving professionals from non-traditional backgrounds the opportunities to do amazing work.
It's a great pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the honor, and I appreciate the work that BRIDGEGOOD is doing. Great pleasure to be here today.
Since we have some time together, I'd love to ask you a few questions about the work you've done around diversity, equity, inclusion. And specifically, just this year, you really took a bold stance at Twilio and said Twilio is an anti-racist company, and we're going to create a series of priorities and bring the whole company along on this journey. What has your personal journey with anti-racism been like, and how's that informed your work in building an anti-racist company?
I would like to think of myself as, somewhat enlightened and a somewhat, progressive person who believes in human rights for all human beings, and certainly would like to think of myself as someone who isn't racist. When the events of this summer happened, when the murder of George Floyd happened, it was a little bit of an awakening for me personally. And I told this to Twilio. I actually sent this in a video to the whole company at the time, because I saw the headline that another black man had been killed by police. And I, sort of mentally registered, okay, that happens. And I scrolled past the headline. And then, a few days later, obviously, a lot of people didn't scroll past the headline. They read it, they got angry, they made noise. And I felt ashamed. It's like, why have I allowed myself to become so immune to this story of black men in particular getting killed by our own police, the people who are supposed to protect us, so that I don't even think it's interesting or newsworthy? I can just scroll right past it. That's a problem. That's a problem inside of me. That's a problem with our society. I got angry. I got angry at myself. I got angry at the society that we're in. I got angry at just how did we get to this place? Companies have an opportunity and in many ways an obligation to try to build a stronger community and a stronger society around them, both for the benefit and the strength of the company, but also for the benefit and strength of society that enables corporations to exist. So I believe we have a very important role to play in building our communities and our society. And that's when the language of anti-racism began to appeal to me as the right way of expressing what we want. We don't want to just not be racist personally or not have bias as a company, but we actually want to actively work to reverse the state of racial injustice that exists in our country and in the world today. And that's the work of people who truly want to make change. It's not enough to just not be a bad person yourself or not run a bad company, but actually to try to change for the positive and undo the work of centuries. And in many ways, human condition is wired to be tribal, and our higher ordering functions of our brain have to fight that. And the same thing happens at a societal scale. And that's what I read into as I learned more about anti-racism. That's what the act of anti-racism is about. That's what the idea of anti-racism evangelizes. And we can take on that stance personally, but we can also take on that stance as a company. And so we chose to do so. And we used the moment this summer with the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery as a catalyst to really examine how we were approaching racial justice and decide that anti-racism was actually what we wanted to stand for, and to start making the journey into becoming an anti-racist company.
When you were talking about diversity, underrepresentation, and addressing that challenge, you painted a really simple but clear vision, which was to have the Twilio and the workforce represent the makeup of the communities around us. It's kind of that big picture, right? That, irrespective of where the numbers play, that's what we need to shoot for.
If you sort of look at your company, you say, wow, the makeup of our community looks like this. But then once you go inside the doors, inside the walls of our company, we look very different. You have to ask yourself, well, why is that? Is there some sort of bias in that door? That when you walk from the outside the door to inside the door, there's some bias that's preventing people from, like, you have to wonder why it is that there is such a big difference between the world outside your walls and the world inside your walls. And unpacking the answer to that question leads you down the path of building a more equitable and just company.
One of the other things we at Twilio and you have led to try to achieve that is hiring talent from non-traditional backgrounds. Why do you believe in hiring talent from non-traditional backgrounds, and how have you seen Twilio benefit from that?
This is something that I picked up from Mitch and Freda Kapoor, who were early investors, are early investors in Twilio, and have been advisors to me all along in building the company, and really a voice of building a just and ethical company, kind of whispering in my ear all these years. And they're very wise in a lot of these issues. And one of the things that they've always instilled in me is, when you meet people, the thing you're looking for people to join your company, and the best indicator of how far they're going to go and how far they're going to take your company is how far they've traveled themselves. And a lot of hiring practices are based on position in the world, let's just say. Did you attend an Ivy League school? Did you get a 4.0 grade point average? That is measuring where you are. People who were born with a lot of privilege and whose parents went to that school, and so they had an easier time getting in, and whatever it is, they may not have had to travel very far to get to that position. But then you think about somebody who didn't have that kind of privilege and had to travel very far to get to the point where they were interviewing for your company. There's a signal in that. In many ways, trying to measure is distance traveled. That's a sign of grit. That's a sign of tenacity. That's what you want in your company. I've always looked at folks coming from non-traditional backgrounds into the world of technology, especially folks who have changed careers midlife. That is a tremendous sign of distance traveled. To have spent a substantial part of your adult life thinking you're going to do one thing, and then waking up one day and saying, I see a better way, and starting from scratch over again, learning a new skill, going to a boot camp, leaving a paying job in order to retrain yourself. That shows a tremendous amount of tenacity, of grit, determination, and distance traveled. So I think folks who come at this industry from non-traditional backgrounds and have taken a path like that, that is a great signal of what they're going to do going forward. And I want those people working at Twilio. But the thing is, you have to go out of your way to make them successful. I think a lot of companies have looked at, say, accelerators and said, oh yeah, that's great. We'll hire some people, and they hire them and they just throw them onto a team with a new college grad who did a 4-year program and maybe did multiple internships along the way, so they got work experience. And then you throw someone who's taken a, let's say a 9-week boot camp and has not worked professionally, throw them on the team. And oftentimes, they kind of put them into a sink or swim environment, and predictably a good number of them might sink. It makes sense that if you want to actually tap into this talent pool, we actually have to work at how to make sure they're successful. And that's why we built the Hatch program, which is our apprenticeship program. And so what we did is we first hired an engineering leader whose goal was to be a great educator and a great mentor. And we have that person lead the cohort of our apprenticeships. The first 3 months is that mentor working with the team of apprentices together, building their first, essentially commercial collaborative application together. And they're all learning together. They're all at a similar place. And they've got a leader whose job it is to teach them and support them and make them successful. Then the second half of the apprenticeship, they actually get embedded into teams. And now they are in a real working environment with the team, but they're also supported by the manager they had in the apprentice program. They're also supported by a team, their whole cohort of other apprentices, and the person who hired them, the engineering leader of the team that's sponsoring that apprentice. And what we found as a result of this program is that 91% of the Hatch apprentices who have joined our apprentice program a year later are accepted a full-time offer from that team and are working as a full-time engineer on the teams they joined. And so I think this model of realizing that you need to, value people based on the distance traveled, figure out ways to bring those people into the company, but then also support them and make sure you continue their journey and support them in that journey. That's how we've been able to make folks successful, and I'm really proud of that program.
Thanks, Jeff. That's really well put. And I think that 91% transition is a very stark contrast from where you started, describing what was happening beforehand, which is like sink or swim, where the majority end up sinking because of, a lack of transition and support there.
Yeah.
I also want to, call out that I was really pleasantly surprised as a leader at Twilio that we officially have an early in career talent team in the people team. And when I first met with them, I told them this may be one of the coolest teams at Twilio because I think it operationalizes so much of everything we've been talking about and every intention that a lot of good managers and leaders have at Twilio. So thank you for that as well. What would you say to leaders who want to hire talent from non-traditional backgrounds, but really just don't know where to begin?
Don't hire folks from a non-traditional background just to meet a number and then not be willing to support them. I think that's doing a disservice to a lot of people, including yourself as a leader. And so I just think going in with, a really good sense of here's why you're doing it. Here's what you're trying to accomplish. And here's how you're going to be committed long-term to the success of people in their journey, continuing to grow and become greater and greater contributors and greater professionals in their own careers.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your contributions to the community. And congratulations again on accepting our Resilience Award.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it. And I appreciate all the work that you and BRIDGEGOOD are doing also for folks. And I appreciate everybody who is traveling that distance and who is investing in yourselves. And I can't wait to see what you build. And I hope you come and work at Twilio.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeff. Take care.
Bye.